Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
John, you Blast the Radio broadcast all of Zelensky's speech.
Yes, we did.
Boy, I tell you, pretty heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Imagine, he said, I was interested to hear him. He said, Dear Justin. He called Dear Justin several times. But he asked Canada, in essence, to imagine what it would be like at 4 o'clock every morning to be awakened by explosions around your city. Children, desperate children, asking what it's all about. How do you explain that? 97 children killed so far. One of the things that really struck with me, he said, and your beloved CN Tower is struck and destroyed.
Right.
That's the kind of life that we're living. What was your reaction?
He was very, very good at using geographical references that every Canadian would know. He talked about Vancouver. He talked about what would it be like to wake up and your, Canadian flags around you are no longer there. Plucked off the streets of Montreal. Very impassioned man. He's, you and I have talked many times about where is leadership. Well, there is leadership. This is an incredible human being, and he's asking Canada, to step up and do more. It just, we have to do something, and I am frustrated by the inaction. And I know that militarily, Canada is not. We're not America. We're not the UK. We're
but we're a member of NATO.
We are. So we obviously we are good negotiators. We are. We need to start leading the conversation. I guess that's our role, and that's maybe why he came to us. We need to start the conversation and start really moving things forward and getting the world on board. Look, there are rules, but he ain't playing by the rules in Russia. So what do we do?
Well, my feeling is that we simply cannot sit idly by as we are now and allow this to happen. Pregnant women and their babies destroyed, children being killed, kindergartens being targeted, schools being targeted, hospitals being targeted.
Like I said, he's not playing by the rules. Why are we?
It's a difficult decision. I know that. But he did say he thanked Canada for our role thus far. But he said, we need more. And he said, we must close the skies. And I know this is the decision that NATO is grappling with, the risk of nuclear war. But the experience, if you're a student of history at all, you realize when you look back that every time we tried to dance around a dictator, a despot, we lost. These people like Putin only understand one thing, and that's power, retribution. That's the only thing they understand. So this idea that we can't, close the skies for Ukraine, the no-fly zone, because it might risk nuclear war. There's a risk, but you know what, John? There's a hell of a risk if we don't do anything as well.
That's it.
Because essentially what we are saying, NATO, here's this great body of European nations joined together in common defense. But what we are saying is that, you know what? If there's a risk of nuclear war here, we really can't do anything. We'll just allow this despot, this murderer, to go ahead and do what she wishes. Essentially, that's what we're saying to Putin right now.
It's that petulant child who we allow to continue, running the table. No, at some point you got to put that kid on a timeout and show them who's boss.
Well, people may have some thoughts on that. It's one of the things I must say that concerns me. And once again, I don't seem to be getting very far. We're now 20 days into this. and we still have not received one single refugee. Almost 3 million refugees now, many of them in Poland. It's so desperate in Poland now for accommodation, but they're not screaming, we can't accommodate. They say, you know what, we'll whatever we have to do, we will do. Meantime, we in Canada, with all of the space in the world, Doug Ford has come forward and said, listen, you know what? We need at least 300 new workers in the province of Ontario alone. And 20 days, and we haven't brought a single one over here. And from what I understand, there's still no real plans to do so. The other thing is, um, Canada announced again this morning that we have sanctions against 15 more Russians. So one of my questions is, wait a minute, we're 20 days into this, almost 3 weeks into this, and now 20 days later, we're imposing sanctions on 15 more. Why the hell didn't we do this 20 days ago? I mean, can we not get serious here? And not only that, as I've said before, as the price of gasoline escalates, it just pumps more money into Putin's pockets. How much he is suffering financially, I don't know. It really begs the question. Very clearly, it's not having any effect. He continues to bomb, including bombing, bombing civilians. In fact, he appears to be targeting civilians. Can we continue to allow this? There's still about 40 million people left in Ukraine. I've asked this question before, and I ask it of my country, my countrymen. Are we really prepared to allow 1 million people to die? How about 5, 10, 15, 20 million people? I mean, Stalin had no difficulty in starving to death about 8 or 9 million Ukrainians a number of years ago. Hitler had no difficulty in murdering 6 million Jews. Are we prepared to stand by and allow this to happen again? So far, the answer is yes, sadly. Well, we have to move on. If you have any thoughts on that, I would certainly be glad to take your call, to take your text. But there is another question confronting it because, as I say, sadly, I have to admit defeat. I'm not getting very much traction concerning why we are not bringing refugees here. I don't know why my fellow Canadians are not concerned about this. There's not even a mention hardly in the media about this. A group in Manitoba are saying, please speed things up. But it's 20 days now. I mean, people need, and I still get people saying on Facebook and other, well, maybe they don't want to come here. Maybe some don't want to come here, but many of them do. In fact, my understanding is there is now a list of over 10,000 people already signed wanting to come to Canada. Why aren't they here? Let's move on. To mask or not to mask? That's the question that faces us today. Next Monday, masks are no longer mandatory in Ontario. Many people are applauding. Many people are opposed. Some think the mask mandate should have been scrapped a long time ago. Some people think we should continue to force people to mask up. The issue seems particularly controversial in our schools. I see where here in Ottawa, the French school board has appealed to the province to extend the mask mandate. I'd like to know your feeling on this. Let's remember, I mean, the wearing of masks will still be optional. If you want to wear a mask, no matter where you go, it's entirely up to you. But the government won't compel you to do it anymore. It'll be optional for individuals, for you, and for businesses. What's your reaction? Good idea, or is it too soon? One of the arguments that makes a little sense to me comes from, I believe it was the French school board, saying that they would like to delay at least until we see the results of the March break. Not much question that we will see an increase, an uptick in the number, I would imagine, following the March break. So the school board, or at least some of them, are saying, at least wait until we see the reaction to that. There may be a point there. What do you think? Is it time to scrap the masks, or is it too soon? And you personally, will you continue to wear masks, at least in crowded conditions? Or will you happily toss the damn things into the garbage? What about your situation? And what about businesses? This is a tough decision for a business owner. I would imagine that some people would feel more comfortable if they went for, let's say, to a restaurant where you still had to mask, and the restaurant may decide that it wants to make sure that all of its customers are masked. On the other hand, there may be people who say, listen, if you're going to insist on masks, I'm not going to your place. So this is a real tough decision for businesses, which have already had a tough 2 years, let's be honest. What's your feeling about that? Would you prefer to do business with a place that insists on masking, or would you stay away? But overall, do you approve of this new freedom? And it is freedom. The individual now, that's you and me, we now can make the decision ourselves come Monday. Do we want a mask or do we not? Now, there are some exceptions. Public transit in Ontario, you'll still be compelled to mask. The federal regulations concerning masking are still there, airplanes, uh, trains, etc. But essentially, in the province of, actually, a lot of people are saying it's too soon, but we're one of the last jurisdictions in North America. In fact, one of the last jurisdictions in the Western world to stop the mandate, because every other province pretty well has said, that they've scrapped the mandate some time ago. But what do you think? And what do you think of school boards attempting to overrule the province and saying, no, we want to continue forcing children to wear masks in the class? Is it a good decision by Doug Ford and his government, or is it not? And as I say, if you have any thoughts concerning Ukrainian President Zelensky's address to Parliament, love to hear your reaction. Close the sky, he said. Please do more. John, any reaction thus far?
Lots and lots of reaction to both topics that you've put out there so far.
Okay.
I'll remind the listener that we invite your phone calls especially. This is a call-in show above everything. 613-413-2217. But we understand how the world works today. A lot of people prefer to just punch an answer into a keyboard, and you can do that at Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Twitter. I will get your comments up on the screen so you can see them there, and I will read as many as I can as well, which is probably better for the podcast anyway, if people can actually hear what we're saying. Cheryl says maybe some refugees don't want to come here, but they should have been offered a chance. No strings attached. This is full emergency. These people cannot wait, and then we can deal with the paperwork after they get here. Kim says, I will be wearing a mask. This ain't over. Terry says, I had more shots than Bobby Orr. Enough with the bleeping masks. Robert, immigrants to Canada from Ukraine have proven to be valued Canadian citizens. Anne says Canadian planes are going over with military personnel, and there is no reason why they can't bring refugees to Canada on the return flight.
Can I just comment on that? It isn't generally known, and I did the research, and this is true, that Canada is home to more people of Ukrainian descent than any other nation on earth except for Russia. We have in Manitoba alone about 1.3 million people are of Ukrainian descent, and there are several million more in the rest of the country. Many of these people have already come forward and said, listen, we will open our homes. We don't need to spend taxpayers' money. We will even, in some cases, there are organizations that will even pay an airline to bring them here and accommodate them, provide them with food, et cetera, et cetera. This idea that somehow or other, well, we don't have spaces for them, I've heard that. Well, we can't afford it and so forth. I'm telling you that there are more than 1 million people in this country who have already indicated one way or the other that they would be only pleased to open their homes. They will look after them. They will provide food, accommodation. That, in all probability, we would be required to provide whatever medical assistance is necessary. But I've even had people come forward and say, you know what, if there's a medical cost, we'll even pay that. But the government, goddamn Trudeau, still they are insisting that there be visas. And I've said this 1,000 times, and I'll say it another 1,000 times with the same result, which is nothing. And the fact is that every single day, we allow people to cross at Roxham Road, no documentation, provide them everything, including medical and accommodation, and nobody complains. But here we have, and I am talking almost exclusively about mothers and their children. That 90% or 95%, and the elderly, but primarily mothers and children. And you know what? I even said on Facebook and got no response from any of you. Listen, If you don't want to bring mothers over here, there are hundreds and maybe thousands of orphan children. Could we at least bring some orphan children over here? No, we can't do that. And yet we say, well, Trudeau stands there, and says, well, we're shoulder to shoulder. Now, which I say, well, we're not. Go ahead, John, please.
No, I would say the Ukrainians are shouldering a lot more than you and I could ever possibly imagine. Glenn says, Lowell, exactly. How do you suggest that Canada gets involved in closing the skies?
Well, listen, you got to understand how the world works. Canada is member of NATO. NATO is made up of a number of Western nations which have signed a treaty that if one of them is attacked, it will be considered an attack on them all, and they will all come to their defense. What Zelensky has said to NATO, listen, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, but it is a Western nation, it's a democracy, a well-established, honest government here. Please treat us as you would if we were a NATO nation. It's a really, to be honest, I mean, being as not a member of NATO was really a technicality. But for that, NATO is saying, no, we can't do that. What I am saying is that at the very least, Canada should shove off the shackles and say, listen, we understand there's a risk, but we as Canadians cannot stand by and let people be brutally murdered and a country leveled to the ground. They're not a member of NATO, but let us declare a no-fly zone. And if any Russian jet wants to fly over there, then shoot the son of a bitch down. If I were Prime Minister, that's what I would say. Not that I would get elected for that. Go ahead.
Over to YouTube, and Hines says the government will bring in all kinds of refugees from war-torn countries in the Americas, the Middle East, and even Africa. What's the holdup for Ukraine? It's a Western nation. That's why. Cheryl says, speaking of Roxham Road, all immigrants to Canada via Roxham Road are presently being put up at grand and lavish hotels, all at the taxpayers' expense. We've got a lengthy one from Chris. Let's get to that. Let me get over to my Facebook so I can get that here. Zelensky's address was great and accurate. I have several Ukrainians in my life that I speak to every single day. One of the men who cannot leave the country gives me daily updates. He's regularly woken up every day by air raid sirens and sleeps in his clothes in case he needs to run for a bomb shelter. They're eating non-perishables like rice, beans, because food is at a wild shortage, and the world is allowing humans, innocent citizens, to be treated this way by refusing to stand up and say enough is enough. Instead, we take away their toys. When this is done, the decision makers will still be alive and have plenty of toys. The human beings in Ukraine are seeing their homes blown up, their entire lives ripped apart. They'll never recover. We are dropping the ball here huge.
I agree. Got to take a moment out here for our good friends at Shields up there in Pakenham. Once again, the cost of living continues to spiral, and they're telling us that it's going to go even higher. They're blaming the war in Ukraine, and it's partially responsible. But I'm going to tell you something. I have for months I have been talking about the fact that the carbon tax, in some cases, and Mo, the Prime Minister of Saskatchewan, came to Trudeau one time with two receipts, one for about $4,000, another $5,000. Those were receipts for the carbon tax on the propane to heat the wheat, to dry the wheat for those Western farmers. $4,000 a month in one case, $5,000 a month. And I warned at that time that you're going to see the price of wheat, the price of bread, pasta, etc., skyrocket. But of course, nobody wants, in this country, the media doesn't want to blame Trudeau for anything. So it's all Ukraine's fault. Well, I'm telling you, it's not. I got to get around to a commercial here sooner or later. All I'm saying is that, that woman who stood up with that brave woman who stood up with the sign and said, don't believe the propaganda you're hearing. It's all lies. Right. Well, there's a fair amount of propaganda going on here. If you're going to charge farmers an extra $4,000 or $5,000 a month, wheat farmers, to dry their grain, and carbon tax, okay? I'm not talking about fertilizer. I'm talking about carbon tax, $4,000 to $5,000 a month. You're going to see an increase in the price of wheat, and you can't blame Ukraine, which brings me to Shields. The price of everything's going up, including bread, pasta, everything, including appliances. But Shields is very aware of this. They're pricing very, very carefully. As I've pointed out before, they're up in Pakenham. Cost of doing business a little bit less. And whenever possible, not always possible, but whenever, they pass the savings along to you. Check out the prices. It's a really good website, Shield Furniture and Appliances, www.shields.ca. Good folks. Thank you, John. More back to you.
My pleasure. All right. The phone number is 613-413-2217. We have a text there. Hi, Lowell. Just got back from Florida and felt normal not wearing a mask. The schools can maybe still wear them, but for consenting adults, they are not needed. The problem with masks are the people with COVID should really be wearing them. For health, the healthy can wear N95 or CN95 if they worry about catching COVID, because the other masks are useless in stopping from catching COVID. I had mild Omicron and I'm not wearing one. We have another text coming in here. Nope, that's the same one. Here we go. I'm going to watch Darby O'Gill and the Little People on St. Patrick's Day to hear a wee bit of the Irish. Okay, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but thank you nonetheless. Reading these cold, Lowell, sorry. Lori says, if Ukraine was part of NATO, we would be there right away. Putin knows there will be a no-fly zone. Let's go help those people now. Rick says, your assumption that the outcome was negative is speculation.
What is he talking about?
He may be referring to somebody else. I'm not sure. Your assumption that the outcome was negative is speculation. I suspect he's having a conversation with somebody else. Sorry, it all pops up in the same feed for me here, Lowell. Let me see. Over to YouTube. Everything comes to you by truck. If oil goes up, so does the cost of everything. All right, Cheryl says, to quote the late and great Sir Winston Churchill, an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. And regrettably, where Russia is concerned, it seems we are appeasing them by not standing up and being counted. Canada has been a beacon of hope for war-torn nations in the past, and there's absolutely no reason we cannot do it again. Stand with Ukraine, says Cheryl. Tony says, remember how quick and easy it was to get the Syrian refugees into Canada? Maybe Ukrainians just aren't the right ethnicity.
That's a puzzle.
That keeps coming up a lot. The ethnic issue keeps coming up a lot.
But what concerns me as much as anything is the lack of response by Canadians, the media. I have not, I have begged listeners, please phone your MP, and I understand some of you did, but I have yet to see one single letter to the editor. I don't understand why people who think that who really care could not at the very least take 5 minutes, write a brief letter to the editor and said, please, it's 20 days now, bring the refugees here now, stop the delay. Not one. And I read about 5 newspapers a day, Canadian newspapers, and I have not seen one letter to the editor on this. I mean, you'll see letters to the editor about, a street corner that, every little thing you can imagine. But nobody in this country seems concerned about Ukrainians, mothers and children. I don't understand it. It saddens me. Go ahead, John.
Do you think it's the distance, that it's not happening right next door? That, just like the world wars, they didn't happen here. It was way over there. People aren't realizing just how close we actually are to each other in this planet.
Yeah, it's a 6-hour flight.
Right.
Actually, during the Second World War, I was a little boy, but I can certainly remember. There was a great deal of unity here. We contributed tens of millions of dollars in war bonds. People gathered up metal and so forth and gave it away. I can remember as a little boy going around and picking up milkweed. It was used in flotation devices, etc. The wheat. So, in the Second World War, people back home, they did unify around a common cause. Go ahead, please.
Your fellow Canadians are concerned and do want to bring Ukrainians here, but we don't have any of Justin's media talking about it. It wasn't too long ago Stephen Harper said he would bring Syrian refugees to Canada, but it wasn't fast enough for the Liberal press. Let me see. Donald says, when you write to a newspaper, it must go into the trash. Okay.
No, I don't believe that.
No.
I'm going to tell you. Now, maybe the Citizen may not write anything that's critical of Trudeau, but the Sun certainly would. We're very good, I'm sorry, at saying that they care, we care, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And some people do. God bless you. But sadly, most people don't do very much, if anything. Go ahead.
Let's go to email. We haven't taken an email yet. The address is lowell@blasttheradio.com. Rob in Carlton Place says, it was no surprise we've not taken in refugees. We have A do-nothing government. Normally, I prefer when they do nothing because everything they touch is a disaster. But in this case, just like Afghanistan, it is a tragedy, and a national embarrassment, as is our Prime Minister. Rob in Carleton Place. Regarding ethnicity of Ukrainians, from what I understand, it is a very Catholic country. Some Catholic vote liberal, but considering the moral skeeziness of the liberal policies, most would not. Just my thoughts. Let me see. Angela is on Twitch. She says, maybe when people, meaning customers, don't have to wear masks in stores, they won't be as nasty. There are so many mean, nasty customers in the last 2 years. I don't know about that. Pauline says, first off, everyone is responsible for their own health and safety. If you're comfortable wearing a mask, wear it. I will mask in a crowd. As far as businesses, why don't they do when smoking was an issue? Smoking or non-smoking? Well, masking or no masking. They need to do what they can do to stay in business. Everyone's screaming for choice. Well, there you are. The back room sequestered from general population. I really don't see the issue. Every problem has
a good point.
solution.
Good point.
Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Lisa says, I'm still going to wear masks for a while longer. Craig says, I will not wear a mask for on the 21st unless I'm with clients that feel better. If we all did, I'll remain respectful at all times. Rick on Facebook, when 70,000 people can attend the Super Bowl without masks, you have to wonder what good they have done. Tony says, so let's see if I have this right. We can't figure out something as simple as wearing of masks, but we're ready for all-out war. Fantasyland. Darlene is also on Facebook. She comments, I am all for the dropping the mandates. It should be a choice, and I'm okay with it now. I don't think there was a huge increase following the truckers' visit here.
Let me just respond to the, not the last one, but the one about, can you go back, John, and read that one again?
Which one in particular? The Super Bowl?
No.
I'll be wearing a mask on the 21st unless my clients feel better.
No, it's okay. That's all right. But he referred to the fact that we're prepared to do something, but we're prepared to go to all-out war.
Oh, that was Tony. Tony says, okay, so let's see if I have this right. We can't figure out something as simple as the wearing of masks, but we're ready for all-out war. Fantasyland. That was Tony.
Well, we're not ready for all-out war. But here's my point. There has been an assumption, and we've seen it. We certainly saw it. We saw it in the Second World War until Churchill came along. The assumption that somehow or other we can talk our way out, that we can stay away, and that despots and murderers will leave us alone. My fear is that by doing nothing or very little, that may be more dangerous than doing something. I could be wrong, but history certainly indicates that if you leave despots alone, and you refuse, and you're afraid to tackle them, or you think that you can talk them out of it, it just doesn't work that way. That's what history says. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, don't be sorry. It's your show. You get to say what you want to say here. I just do the heavy lifting. All right, we got a couple of emails in. Thank you for the emails. Lowell at blasttheradio.com. Hi, Lowell. I'm terribly upset and concerned about the poor people in Ukraine and don't understand why the Canadian government isn't doing more to bring them over here. It's absolutely terrible. I've written to my MP and other officials and gotten nowhere. It makes us Canadians look bad. I'm embarrassed. I'm heartbroken over these poor Ukrainians and even wake up in the night thinking about them. What if it were us? As far as the masks, I'm choosing to continue to wear mine and hope I'm not harassed for doing so. I think we should be able to choose what we are comfortable with. I think, yes, it's too soon, definitely, especially with the surge in China right now. Will that come here?
Yeah, the situation in China is a little scary. They have an outbreak now, apparently, that's as bad as anything they ever saw there. There is no question that COVID is still around. We haven't beaten it. I doubt if we ever will totally. But we've got to be careful. There's no question about it. But I agree that I think the time has come where individuals, we can make our own mind up on this. We don't need the government to tell us where to wear a mask, etc. Not anymore. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Go ahead, John.
Another email, this one from Paul. I hope that one positive thing that can come out of this disaster in Ukraine is that we and our Western allies can wake up and have a common front in responding to those rising bullies such as China. Russia is a declining bully. They would love nothing more than to deal individually with smaller countries, but together we can stand up to them. This also should include clamping down on industrial espionage and stopping purchases of critical Canadian companies such as the satellite company that CSIS recommended not to allow China to purchase, but Liberals okayed said purchase.
But John, in that regard, I think the time is, you know what, if China in any way aids and abets Russia and its murder in Ukraine, I think the time has come where Canadian companies should just stop buying anything made in China. I am sick and tired of going into these stores. Yeah, maybe it's 50 cents cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. But if I repeat, if China in any way helps Russia here, I say block their blessed stuff at the border. Don't let it into the country. If we have to pay more for Canadian made, so be it. That's to me, that's the only message that China will understand. Just tell China, you know what? You help Russia. We're not buying your cheap furniture anymore, you sons of bitches. Go ahead, John.
Let's go to Tom. Masks are not mandatory here in Florida, never have been. Carrie and I, on our own accord, do wear masks when we go shopping or to restaurants. Corleen says no more masks. After March break comes Easter and then May 2-4. When does this end? Robert, anyone who wears glasses knows that masks are useless. Toss the masks and get back to living. I wear glasses. What do you mean, Robert?
They're not useless. I mean, that's silly to say that.
My glasses have proven to be very important in being able to read your comments, Robert.
Oh, you people! Some of you people make me laugh. All the doctors, all the science, all the medicine, and the nurses, and
liars.
They're all wrong. But by God, I read this site. I saw this place on Facebook. I forget the site.
Liars.
They said it was no good, and they're all a bunch of liars. Yeah, that's it. Facebook has set me straight. Thank you all, folks. Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green Podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green Podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.